Hi everyone, Ms. Tui here. Multiplication can be tricky, and Ozobot wants to help you practice two different strategies that can make it easier. Your bot will randomly choose factors to guide your practice with the commutative and associative properties of multiplication. For today's lesson, you will need an Ozobot fully charged and calibrated, the OzoBlockly editor. Today we'll be using levels 3 and 4, the What's the Property activity sheet, and a pencil. In today's lesson, you will develop a program in OzoBlockly to instruct your bot to follow and repeat a set sequence to randomly choose 2 or 3 numbers, demonstrate the commutative property of multiplication, and demonstrate the associative property of multiplication. Commutative comes from the word commute, which means to travel or move. So when demonstrating the commutative property, you move or change the order of the factors. The commutative property of multiplication tells us that the order of the factors or numbers being multiplied does not change the product. For example, if I multiply 4 times 5, I will get a product of 20. If I change the order of the factors and multiply 5 times 4, I still get 20 as the product. Here's another example. If 3 times 2 equals 6, then I also know that 2 times 3 equals 6. Associative comes from the word associate, which means to join or connect with. So when demonstrating the associative property of multiplication, you use parentheses to group 2 out of the 3 numbers being multiplied to know which numbers to multiply first. The associative property of multiplication tells us that no matter which 2 numbers are joined together first, the product does not change. For example, if I multiply 2 times 3 times 4, the parentheses tells me to solve 2 times 3 first, and I would get 6. Then if I multiply 6 times 4, the product is 24. Now if I multiply 2 times 3 times 4, the parentheses tells me to solve 3 times 4 first, and I would get 12. Then if I multiply 12 times 2, the product is still 24. Here's another example. 2 times 5 times 3 tells me to solve 10 times 3, which equals 30. 2 times 5 times 3 tells me to solve 15 times 2, which also equals 30. Let's get started. Before you can start practicing the commutative and associative properties of multiplication, you need to program your bot to spin and change color to signal when it is about to tell you a factor. Open up OzoBlockly and go to level 3. Which block category will you use to tell Ozobot to spin? That's right, movement. I will click and drag a spin left block onto my workspace. Which block category will you use to tell Ozobot to change the color of its LED lights? Well done, it's light effects. I will click and drag a set front lights color randomly block onto my workspace and place it as the second instruction in the sequence. Now it's your turn to begin your program. Can you build the sequence of code to program your bot to spin left and change color? Next, you will add to your code to program your bot to choose and say a number between 1 and 12. Go to level 4. Which block category will you use to tell Ozobot to say something? That's right, sounds. I will click and drag a Say Number 1 block onto my workspace and place it as the third instruction in the sequence. Since Ozobot is going to choose a number between 1 through 12, you will delete the green number 1 block attached to the Say block. I will click and drag the number 1 block to the left of my workspace and delete it. Now, to program Ozobot to randomly choose a number from 1 through 12, you will go to the Math block category and use the random integer from 1 to 100 block. I will click and drag the random integer from 1 to 100 block and attach it to the right side of the Say Number block. Next, you will change the number 100 to 12, since Ozobot will be choosing numbers from 1 to 12. Can you add to your sequence of code to program your bot to choose and say a number randomly from 1 to 12? Right now, your program will tell Ozobot to say one number, but since you are multiplying, you need Ozobot to say two numbers. Did somebody say add a loop? Ozobot will need to repeat the sequence to tell you two numbers. Go back to level 3. Then click on loops and find a count-controlled loop. I will click and drag a count-controlled loop and wrap it around the entire sequence of code. You do not need to change the count since it is already set at 2. Ozobot will also need to give you some time to write each number. Which block category will you use to tell Ozobot to wait? Well done. It's timing. I will click and drag a wait 1 second block onto my workspace and place it as the final step in the sequence inside the loop. Can you add a count-controlled loop and a wait block to your sequence of code? Finally, Ozobot will need to tell you 4 number pairs. I feel another loop coming on. Do you? Go back to loops. I will click and drag a count-controlled loop and wrap it around the other loop block. Since Ozobot needs to repeat the sequence 4 times, I will change the count from 2 to 4. The program now has a nested loop, or a loop within a loop. Can you add another count-controlled loop around your sequence of code and change the count to 4? Nice job building your program. You are ready to test it out. Look at your activity sheet. You will place Ozobot on the circle labeled Bot. Connect your Ozobot by clicking on the bot icon and following the instructions on the screen. Next, you will click Run Program. Let's watch my bot in action. 12. Can you run your program to test that it is working correctly? Your bot should spin left, change color, say a number, and repeat the sequence to say 4 number pairs. Time to run the program again and record the numbers your bot tells you in the boxes below 2 numbers pits. After your bot is done, you will use the numbers it gave you to multiply and show the commutative property. Let's see what numbers my bot chooses. The first 2 numbers chosen were 9 and 10. 9 times 10 equals 90. The commutative property tells me the order of the factors doesn't change the product, so 10 times 9 also equals 90. I will continue to practice the commutative property using the other numbers my bot picked. Now it's your turn to play. Can you click Run Program and write the numbers your bot tells you? Then use the numbers to show the commutative property of multiplication. Great work using the numbers your bot picked to practice the commutative property of multiplication. Let's edit the code to move on to the associative property of multiplication. The bot will now need to pick 3 numbers instead of 2. I will click on the nested loop or the loop on the inside and change 2 to 3. I will also change the range of numbers my bot will randomly choose. Instead of 1 to 12, I will tell my bot to choose from 1 to 7. Can you edit your code to change the nested count controlled loop to 3 and the numbers picked from 1 to 7? Time to run the program again and record the numbers your bot tells you in the boxes below 3 numbers picked. After your bot is done, you will use the numbers it gave you to multiply and show the associative property. Let's see what numbers my bot chooses. The first 3 numbers chosen were 3, 4, and 5. 3 times 4 times 5 equals 60. The associative property tells me the factors joined together first doesn't change the product. So 3 times 4 times 5 also equals 60. I will continue to practice the associative property using the other numbers my bot picked. Now it's your turn to play. Can you click Run Program and write the numbers your bot tells you? Then use the numbers to show the associative property of multiplication. Check that you have completed the activity. Did you build a code to program your bot to spin, change color, and say a random number? Does your program have a nested loop? Did your bot spin, change color, and give you random numbers in pairs and groups of 3? Did you use the numbers your bot gave you to show the commutative property? Did you use the numbers your bot gave you to show the associative property? If you're looking for more to do, you can gather data about your bot. Which number did your bot choose the most of? Did your bot guide you to find the same product more than once? Or you can play again. Come back again soon for our next lesson.